Shalom and welcome. My name is Esther. You're listening to Awaz Community Radio. I have brought in today as a guest Rabbi Dovid Esienberg from the Prestwich Hebrew congregation, otherwise known as Shrubberies. Thank you for coming in and speaking to my listeners about the Jewish New Year. As I'm aware, the Jewish people will be celebrating the Jewish New Year. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about it and why it is so important?
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for having me on today. It's very nice to be here to get with you and to be able to share with your listeners, hopefully a very diverse audience, about the customs as well as the significance of the Jewish New Year. The Jewish people have been celebrating the New Year. We say that this is the day that God created mankind. So the world was started to be created before, but the world or mankind was created on Rosh Hashanah on the first day of Tishrei, the first day of this month, which is we're celebrating now, coming up starting this Wednesday night. And the significance of that is that every year God takes stock, so to speak, of the world, has a look at everybody, has a look whom he wants to keep around, whom he doesn't want to keep around, who should be prosperous, who will maybe sadly become poor, people who become ill, who will become healthy, countries. Everything gets decided, or the greater things get decided on Rosh Hashanah, get decided on that day. And so it's a very significant day, but not only a significant day within the Jewish year, we say it's a significant day actually for the entire mankind, because it's not only Jews that get judged today, but everybody gets judged for the good things and for the bad things that they do.
Are there any customs that the Jewish people celebrate on the New Year?
So there are certain customs that we have, and there are certain laws that we have as well. So for example, when we speak about customs, on the night of Rosh Hashanah, on the evening, we will be having a meal together with our families. Often there are guests there as well. And there are certain things that we eat as a siman, which means a symbol or an omen. There are certain things that we eat that show certain positive signs. So for example, we eat an apple dipped in honey. You dip the apple in the honey for a sweet new year, because the honey is very sweet and we're hoping that everybody will have a sweet new year. We have rimon, which is pomegranate. As you know, a pomegranate has many, many seeds, and we say that we should have as many good deeds as there are seeds inside a pomegranate. We eat the flesh of the head of a fish or the head of another animal. It could be tongue, it could be neck, whatever. Different people have different things. But what they eat then is, again, as a symbol of shenir larosh v'lo zanav, that we should be a head, we shouldn't be a tail. We should be leaders. We shouldn't be people that have to be following or that have to be sort of behind. We should rather be able to discuss our own fate, our own destiny, things of that sort. And then on top of that, on the day, there are certain things that we do as well, which are more than just a custom. They are really the first things that I mentioned. They're just customs. They're things that Jewish people do. They're a nice thing to do. And then we have, on the day, we have also the blowing of the shofar, the blowing of the ram's horn that we have, that you blow this ram's horn. There's different tones that you blow, and it reminds us of the time that Abram was willing to sacrifice his son Isaac on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, and we remind ourselves of that, and we remember, and we sort of try to, in inverted commas, remind God of that wonderful time as well.
How long does the Jewish New Year last for?
So it's 2 days. It's a 2-day celebration. So it's going to be this Wednesday night, starting this Wednesday night, ending on Friday night. Really, we got the Sabbath right afterwards, so it's really going to turn into a 3-day celebration. But in general, when normally Rosh Hashanah is only 2 days, when it falls out, as it does this year, on Thursday and Friday, it will turn into actually a 3-day Rosh Hashanah or 3-day celebration.
Do you know what time it starts and ends?
The timings are around about, it's going to start around about 7 o'clock, and it's going to end, so because we go directly into Shabbat, there's no real ending to Rosh Hashanah. We go with the ending of Shabbat, at the end of the Sabbath, at the end of Saturday night, which will be around about 8 p.m.
as I'm aware, there's also an honest time of year, and the Jewish people will also be fasting, which is known as the White Fast. Can you tell my listeners, please, Rabbi Eisenberg, why is this so important, this fast?
Okay, so there are really two parts to this entire period, or it's the period that's known as Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of penitence, the 10 days to repent. And it starts with Rosh Hashanah this Wednesday night and ends with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which will be next Shabbos. So not this Saturday, but the Saturday coming after that. And on that Saturday, all the Jewish people will be gathering together in the synagogues. It starts on Friday night. We will be fasting and we'll be praying. So Rosh Hashanah is the day where God does a general reckoning, and Yom Kippur is a day of asking for forgiveness, to say to God, this whole year there have been things that I've done that maybe I shouldn't have done, whether it is between myself and my fellow man, and we try to ask forgiveness from other people to see if we can get that forgiveness from friends, from family, from people whom we might have hurt throughout the year, from people we might have even fallen out with. And the other thing is we try to ask forgiveness from God for some of the things that we shouldn't have done, or we might have done incorrectly this year. And so the fast is very, very important. Fasting is part of that. It's part of the feeling of I'm trying to put myself through a bit of a strenuous time to be able to say to God, I really do appreciate the severity of what has happened, and I appreciate that I want to really get this forgiveness, and therefore I have this day of Yom Kippur where there can be lots of praying and lots of fasting.
Are there any restrictions on the fast day itself?
So other than the eating and the drinking, which we mentioned, there are certain restrictions, and a lot of those restrictions have to do with afflicting yourself, which means we're not going to hurt ourselves as such, even though we speak about affliction, but we don't do certain things that would make a person comfortable. So for example, in the olden days, they used to wear leather shoes, were something that were very comfortable, and so nowadays we also don't wear leather shoes, even though we have many other comfortable modes of footwear. There are people that wear Crocs, there are people that will wear certain trainers that don't have leather in them. There's some people that feel those are too comfortable and don't wear those either. People don't anoint themselves, we don't use creams, we don't use other things as cosmetics. And the other thing that we don't have is there's a ban on marital intimacy on the day of Yom Kippur. We say it's a very, very serious day, and it's not a day to be engaging in intimacy where people would sort of take away from the seriousness of the day and lose themselves in other things.
Very interesting. How long does the fast last for?
So this fast lasts, again, it's an entire day. So we start on Friday afternoon. It will begin round about 6:30, and it will end on the next day on Saturday afternoon or Saturday early evening about 7:45.
Wow, what a long day, Rabbi Eisenberg. Now also, as I am aware and believe, the Jewish people will pass by what we say like sheep who pass by farmers. What is the meaning of this?
So what we say is a prayer that we mention both on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we don't only say it's the Jewish people, but rather God takes all the people in the world and he lets pass them by as Kivnei Maron, it says, which one of the translations is like sheep passing by a farmer. That means when a farmer wants to count his sheep, he takes a very thin door and he lets the sheep go through very slowly. This way there's not going to be 2 or 3 going at once. And what it really means is that God's going to be looking at every single person separately. God is not going to be looking at us as a group, but rather every single person, God takes that person, weighs up that person's positives and the negatives, weighs up what his year was like, weighs up what his aspirations are and what he wants to do for the next year, and decides whether this person deserves to have another year, whether that year is going to be hopefully plentiful, or whether, God forbid, that year might not be as good as people might hope for themselves.
Is that why there are some people who will eat a head of a sheep, just to show the significance of this meaning?
I've not heard that interpretation, but there might be that interpretation as well that we want to sort of, as a meaning. It's the Bnei Maron can mean, it doesn't only mean a sheep by a farmer, but there are different translations that are given. Some say it's going up a narrow path. When you're going up a narrow mountain pass, if you're coming up, if anybody's ever been on the Snake Pass on the way out from Manchester towards Yorkshire, you know that it's a very, very narrow pass, and most of the way is going to have only one lane of traffic. There's not 2 or 3 lanes. So it's not only Bnei Maron meaning that people pass by as sheep in front of a farmer, but it could also mean other things. But all the translations, whichever way it's translated, always means the same thing, and that is one person at a time, and that is every single person receives their own judgment, and the discussion is with each person separately.
Thank you. Do you have any messages you can tell to my Jewish people who be celebrating the New Year and the fast? Do you have any messages you can tell to them, please, today?
Well, I would give a general message, not only to Jewish people, but almost anybody who's listening. I think the general message of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is a message of introspection. We have to live life and think about what we do. People who live life and don't think about what they do end up hurting other people unnecessarily, end up doing things sometimes that they regret, and end up sometimes turning around and saying to themselves, where is my life taking me? And people end up in midlife crises and other things where they don't know, where they're not sure what they should be doing because they've been living without thinking. So the first message of Rosh Hashanah is to live with thinking. Everybody should think, what is my life about? What are the values that I have? What are the things that are most important to me? And then to put a great emphasis on those things as opposed to spending my time on other things that might not be as important or that might be taking away from my goal. And then the second point is also a message of peace, because in the end of the day, we're going to be asking other people for forgiveness, and we're going to be trying to get forgiveness from God. And the truth is, forgiveness is something that we all have inside ourselves. It's something that we can do and that we should do. We should be wanting to forgive other people. We should be wanting to let things go instead of holding on. Bearing a grudge is not good for us, it's not good for society, and it's not good in general. And if we can come out of this Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur period by being better people and by being more forgiving and maybe mending some of those relationships that have gone sour throughout the year and saying, you know what, it's not worth it. It's not worth arguing. It's not worth fighting about. We're much better off being friends. We're much better off being one society that accepts each other and that accepts everybody else with their good things as well as their shortcomings. Then we will have hopefully a much, much better year next year than we've had this year.
Thank you so much, and I wish you, your wife, and all your family a happy New Year.
Thank you very much, and to all the listeners as well.
Thank you.
לשנה טובה, לשנה